Hello, MJ7NLK here, and welcome back to the channel. In today's video we are looking at the Radioddity GD88, which is a dual-band analog and digital DMR handheld radio with GPS and APRS. It covers the VHF 2m and UHF 70cm bands. Thank you to Radioddity for sending me this unit for review, and just to confirm that Radioddity have no input into the content of this video, and I can and will tell you exactly what I think of it. Before then, let's have a look at some CB radio news. I have multiple President radios on the shelf for review. President are a bit like buses really. None to be found and then multiple appear all at the same time. We have the Jerry, which is a cost-reduced Randy 3, the Jimmy 3, which is a very basic CB radio, and the mighty Washington. A lot of people waiting on this one. I have the radio, but I do not have the cooling fans. I am still waiting for them to be delivered. It's basically a George 2, but a ham radio out of the box, and it outputs 80 watts. Really looking forward to that one. I also have en route to me the brand new CB900 Pro from Radioddity. It's not been released yet, but it is imminent. All I know is that it's an enhanced iteration of the Cobra 29 Limited. So here's hoping for a lot of slide switches and dials. I do love classic style CB radios. Before we continue, I have to pay the bills, so let's have a quick message from our video sponsor, PCBWay. PCBWay are makers of prototype PCBs of all kinds. They also offer services like PCB assembly, CNC machining, 3D printing, sheet metal fabrication and injection moulding. Manufacturing times are exceptionally quick and delivery is super fast. I have used their services on many occasions and PCBWay get an NLK-Media thumbs up for quality and service. Check out their website PCBWay.com for more information or follow the link in the video description. PCBWay are running a 10th anniversary special event and you can claim prizes and badges, so it's worth a look. Check the link in the video description. Thank you PCBWay for kindly supporting the channel. There are many handheld radios on the market, and although they all share commonality on the analog side, they are not all the same on the digital side. You have DMR radios and D-Star radios. ICOM and Kenwood use D-Star. Yaesu, Anytone, Retivis and others use DMR. D-Star and DMR are entirely different protocols, and they don't talk to each other. APRS, on the other hand, is a technology that allows for real-time two-way data transmissions and can support GPS position sharing, text messaging, and also can communicate with satellites. Digital radio brings a lot of new features, acronyms, and complications, which takes time to get your head around. Looking at some of the handhelds on the market, you have the value analog radios like the Baofeng UV18 Pro. Well, this is the Pro Max, and the Quansheng UV-K58, covering UHF and VHF, and are typically priced between £30 to £50. Then you have the high-end analog and digital radios, like the ICOM ID52, which is D-Star, costing around £520, and the Kenwood THD75, which is also D-Star, costing around £780. Both of these radios are obscenely priced, but they are the pinnacle of technology and quality. Then you have the mid-range radios, like the GD88, which is an analog and DMR radio, which is competing with the current mid-range king, and the radio with the most stupid name ever, the Anytone AT-D878 UVII Plus. Surely somebody working at Anytone could have come up with something a bit more catchy than that. The UVII Plus is my go-to radio and is priced at around £200, which is the same case for the GD88. The UVII Plus is a solid, reliable and easy to use radio which will take a knock quite happily. And with the large capacity battery, it lasts forever on a charge. Things I don't like about the UVII Plus, well, there's not much to dislike. But the centre up-down button is annoying. You can't push in the centre to select anything. You have to push up and down, and when you found your option, you have to click the green button to select. It would have been so much better if this center button had up, down and select in the middle. It also takes quite a while to boot up, and when you turn it on, you have to wait a while, and we'll turn it on and wait for it to boot up. But apart from that, this radio comes highly recommended. Still waiting. There we go. And it is finally booted. Let's take a quick look at the box. Well, it's a boring box with no shelf appeal at all. I know the most important thing is what's inside the box, but shelf appeal is important if you're displaying something for sale. Let's compare it to the UVII Plus box. Well, you get a picture on the front, it's nice and glossy, you get key features, and you get the box contents. This is how a box should be done. I've mentioned this before in the CB500 review, so let's hope that more effort goes into the CB900 Pro's box when that finally arrives. So let's see what you get in the box. Well, we have the English user manual, and this is an excellent manual and gives you most of the information that you need. Radioddity are superb with their manuals, and they also do extended manuals for their radios, which I highly recommend that you download, especially for something as complicated as a digital radio. You get the manual in a different language. Don't need that. We get the radio, a strap, the charging station, antenna. We have a English charger, or UK charger, should I say, and a European charger in the box. The battery, belt clip, and hidden underneath, a programming cable. That's very nice. Now let me get this white box out the way because it's playing havoc with my camera, and we'll have a look at the contents in a bit more detail and assemble the radio. Okay, I've saved you the pain of putting the radio together. Very simple to do. One thing to note is that if you're going to fit the strap, make sure you fit the strap before you fit the belt clip, because it's not possible to fit this after the belt clip has been fitted. Also, use a screwdriver to remove the clip on the bottom to take the battery out, because that's pretty hard to remove and will destroy your nails. The charging station is superb. That has room for the radio and a spare battery as well. So if you buy a spare battery, you can drop that in the back, and there are indicators on the front for charging of both. Very nice to see. Good addition. Programming cable we mentioned before, and of course the usual, these must be so cheap, these chargers, that you get one for the UK and one for Europe, and two manuals within the box rather than having two versions of the radio, one for the UK and one for Europe. But that's not a bad thing, although this then becomes e-waste. So overall, very, very happy with the accessories that are included in the box, and let's move on. So here they are, the GD88 and the main competitor, the Anytone UVII Plus. They're about the same height off the table, so they're approximately the same thickness. The GD88 is slightly taller, but feels pretty much the same, an extremely solid and well-built radio. I wonder if the boot up time is any quicker. I can try and turn them on at the same time. Okay, the Anytone was turned on just slightly quicker. And this one's already up and waiting to go. This one's still booting. Now it's displaying the pointless splash screen. And still waiting. There we go. And now this one's up and ready to go. You can't actually turn that off. In the menu you've got an option for picture, your own custom text, or a custom picture on the UVII Plus, and you have to have one of them selected and that screen comes up. I wonder if that didn't display, whether the unit would boot a little bit faster, but very frustrating at the time that takes. This was much quicker. Let's do the peel. Excellent, that's out the way. And screen wise, looking at them both nice and bright, both clear, but this very much has a bigger and clearer screen. So there we are, that's those two together. Now let's talk about features and feature comparisons between the two radios. They are both IP54 dust and waterproof rated. The 5 of the 54 means that it has partial protection against dust and small particles, and the 4 relates to its water resistance, which is protection against splashes of water from any direction for up to a minimum of 10 minutes, so that's pretty good. The battery life on the GD88 is a 3000 mAh battery with a quoted standby time of 48 hours. 15 hours in analog and 23 hours on digital. And the UVII Plus has a 3100 mAh battery and is quoted at 35 hours between charges. This thing lasts forever on a charge. So yeah, we'll be interested to see how the battery fares on the GD88. The screen, as we mentioned before, this is a 2-inch screen. This is a 1.77, so not a great deal of difference, but this one is bigger. Documentation, we've covered that, but the extended manual on the GD88 is an absolute must and is extremely well written, so well done Radioddity for that. The manual for the Anytone is good, but really good manuals on the GD88. Power, the GD88 has 2 power settings, a low and high. Low is 2.5 watts, high is 7 watts. The Anytone has a 1 watt, 2.5 watt, 4 watt and 6 watt mode, so you have 4 modes here. This needs a 1 watt mode. If you are communicating with your own repeater in a short distance, then you want it to be 1 watt, not 2.5. That is too much. So it would be nice if in a firmware update we could get at least 3 power settings, a 1 watt, 2.5 and a 7. CTCSS and DCS tones and codes supported on both. GPS and APRS supported on both DMR Tier 1 and Tier 2, although I have read that this one has TX capacity only to beacon your location and this one has TX and RX capabilities. VFO, dual and single modes, so you have 2 VFOs on both radios, but you can switch the display to single if you wish. Repeater, this has something really interesting. So we have same frequency repeater, but we also have a full duplex cross-band repeater function on this radio. So this is interesting. The radio allows for receiving both analog and digital signals on one VFO and can then repeat that on the other VFO in both analog and digital. Well, not at the same time. You can pick whether it's analog or digital, and that is very, very clever. You can't do that on the Anytone. DTMF is supported on both. Encryption, the Anytone has Digi Encrypt, and the GD88 has AES-256 encryption if you have the June 2024 firmware update applied to the radio. Bluetooth, Anytone yes, GD88 does not have Bluetooth. Programming, both radios are programmable. You can only really program these things. If you do it through the menus, then you're asking for trouble, and there's lots of things that you won't be able to do. You have to use the CPS software in order to get the most out of these radios in creating the code plugs and configuring them. So both support that. The UVII Plus is super simple. It's really, really good. The software for this, be interesting to see shortly how this one fares. DMR contacts is something that we need to talk about. 500,000 contacts supported on the Anytone, 300,000 contacts supported on the GD88. This could be an issue as the database currently consists of 264,000 contacts as of the 25th of July 24. And it's growing at approximately 1,750 contacts per month. So in 21 months or so, you could reach the capacity of this radio if you wanted the entire database on the radio. You can always refine the list and only load specific countries if you wish. So that's just a pointer there on the memory of these devices and how many they can hold. Price, we said that before, £200 each, as near as damn it. And the weight, 330 330 grams for the GD88 and 282 grams for the Anytone. So out of those items that I've just mentioned, the GD88 scored 11 out of the 16 and the Anytone 13 out of the 16. But specifications, you know, they don't mean everything. It's all down to the radio, how it's been implemented and how it works. So it'll be very, very interesting to see. But next, we need to update the firmware on this to make sure that we have the latest release, and that's what we're going to do before we delve any further. So here we are on the Radioddity's website. We need to go to support and then click on Radioddity. And then we need to pick our radio, which is the GD88. And when we click on that, we get a list of all of the available downloads. The driver you may require. My cable just worked with the radio straight away with no issues, but that may be because I've already installed other radio drivers or similar cables. If you need one, then download it from here. This is the latest firmware. When you download this firmware, it already includes CPS, but I think it's version 9230, which is required for that firmware. So download this, and then also download the very latest version of the CPS software, 9231. That's pretty much all you need to update the firmware. But if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see under manuals that here we have the extended manual, and the latest version is 3.2. Well worth downloading this, as I mentioned before. It is excellent. So that's all you need from the downloads. Now let's switch over and install the IAP software. So these are the files that I downloaded, and if you look at the firmware update file, you'll need to extract that to your computer. So if you right click on that and say extract, it will then create an extracted folder, and if you go in there, you'll have the following files. So this file here is the CPS software, which is 9.2.30. There is a later release. You have downloaded that as well. This is the release notes for the firmware update. Then you have two files which have bin on the end, two bin files. These are the actual firmware updates themselves. The A and the B on the end are very important. Once the radio is set into IAP mode, you need to check whether it's in A mode or B mode and then write the corresponding bin file to the radio. You'll need to install the IAP software. It may come up with a message saying that you need to authorize it to be installed because it's unrecognized, but you'll just have to override that and install it onto your computer. And once you've installed that on your computer, you will get this. Now, all you need to do here is effectively select your COM port for whichever COM port the computer has assigned to your lead, the programming cable, and I only have one option here, which is COM4, and then you need to open up the bin file depending on the mode the radio's in. So next what you need to do is push and hold this top left button on the radio, keep it depressed, and turn the radio on, and then let go, and you'll see this display, and this display will tell you at the top whether it's in A mode or B mode. Each time you do this, it will alternate between A and B. So this one is in B mode, so I'm going to write the B file to the radio. So let's go and do that. So you select the open app file on the bottom button here and select the B file. Once you've selected the B file, just click the IAP button and that will start writing to the radio. So the first thing it does is to tell you that it's erased everything that was in memory on the radio for the B channel, and now it is currently writing page 30 of 203. So your progress is you're watching the current page until it gets up to 203, and then the radio should show you that it's completed. So let's switch back to the radio now. Okay, so that's now completed, and we can now turn the radio off, push and hold the top button again and turn the radio on, and then we should see IAP-A at the top, and we can now go ahead and write the A file. So now we can go ahead and write the A file, make sure A is selected and click IAP, and that will now write the IAP firmware to the radio. Now I notice that the radio itself has the same current page and end page when I'm writing the A file, but it didn't have that for the B file. On the B file it was the red light on top of the radio that was flashing. Now last time I wrote the A file, as I've done this a few times due to some camera issues, it stopped at 60 and it had a message on the bottom of the radio saying that a timeout had occurred. All I did was turn the radio off and then return it back on into IAP mode and then just reflash the file, and it was absolutely fine. So we can see on the radio here that it's updating, and we'll just wait for it to complete and get to the end. And that's it. The firmware has been updated. Simply turn it off, turn it back on, boot it into normal mode, and then we can go into the menu and have a look at the version. And there you can see the version is June 2024 for both A and B. So that firmware has now been updated. So next we need to install the CPS software, and this is the software that's used to manage the radio via a computer, and you can load code plugs, other people's code plugs, and create your own, as well as load the contacts database into the radio. This is the file here for the latest version 9231. So if you right click on that and say extract all, it will then create an extracted folder on your computer, which it's done here. And in this folder we have some release note information in the PDF, and then we have the installer. So go ahead and install that on your computer. Now you might get a message similar to this which says that Windows protection is protecting your PC. If you want to get around this, you need to click more information and then click run anyway, and then go ahead and install as normal. Once you've installed CPS, double click on the icon that it's put on your desktop, and then you will see the CPS software, which we'll have a look at now. If you've flashed the firmware already, then you know that your computer is able to communicate with the radio. So turn the radio on, have it in a normal mode, open up the CPS software and just click the read button. And that will go ahead and read from the radio all of its settings and information that it currently holds. This process will take a little while. And once it's completed, I'd recommend that you save this file that you've read from the radio, save it to a file on your computer so you always have a copy of the default that came with the radio before you start messing around with settings. If you break something, you can always then reload that file and write it back to the radio. So the next thing we're going to have a look at is writing the contacts to the radio. So in order to get the contacts, you need to go to radioid.net, then go to database and data dumps, and then in this list you'll have user.csv, and that contains the most up-to-date radio ID database. If you click on that, it will download it, and then it's this file here that we need, user.csv. Now this file is updated daily, last updated here on the 27th of July, and the database is increasing every single day. So you'll need to do this every now and then. So in order to import the digital contacts database, you need to go to contacts and then ham contacts in the menu. Then you will be presented with this screen. Let's just jump to the bottom. So there's 300,000 that are possible to go in. And we need to fill this now with the contacts we've just downloaded. Now there are two modes here, 16 byte and 128 byte. Now the 16 byte will be a lot faster, but it will read each row, and once it's read 16 bytes of data, it will just discard the rest. And 128 bytes will read up to 128 bytes before discarding anything else. That will take an awful lot longer to write to the radio. The extended manual says it may take up to an hour to write a full database at 128 bytes, but at least you will have the contact ID, the name, the city, the state, and the country stroke region. So for people that have got large name related information, you may then miss all of this off on the import. So let's have a look at the sample file which Radioddity have got on their website. Now this file is from the 2nd of September 2021, so it's really quite out of date. If we jump to the bottom of this list, we can see there's 203,000 entries, and we know that the current list has 268 odd thousand entries. So if we open up in Excel the user CSV file that we've just downloaded, you'll notice that it's rather annoying that the Radioddity file has first name, no last name, and then city, state and country. But in the radio database, you actually have first name, last name, city, state, country. So what Radioddity have done in their test file is they've just omitted the last name entirely. As you can see here, we've got Wayne Edwards from Toronto, and here it just says Wayne, Toronto. So what we can do here is we can try and formulate the file. And to do that, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to jump to the bottom of this list, and I do that by holding Control and arrow down. So keep Control depressed and push arrow down. That will take you to the bottom of the list. There's the 263,000 records. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to insert a row here, and then I'm just going to put some X's in here. So I can now jump to the top of this list and to the bottom quite easily without lots of scrolling. And then what I'm going to do now is in column C, I'm going to put, well, we can put first name as they've done first. Well, yeah, first name. And then in this cell, we're going to put a formula in, which is equals concat, which means concatenate. We want to concatenate some things together. So we want to concatenate D2, comma, then we want to add a space. So it's quote, space, quote, then comma, and then we want to add the last name, which is E2. And then close the bracket, push enter. So then we end up with D2, comma, quote, quote, space, comma, E2. And then we get Wayne Edwards. And then what we can do is we can copy that cell. And then if we hold Shift Control both together and down arrow, it will take us to the bottom. And then we can just paste that formula into all of those cells. So the next thing we're going to do is, this is now a formula and we want it to be information. So we can highlight column C, right click and say copy, and then right click and then say paste values, which is this symbol here with 1, 2, 3 on it. Then that will effectively convert that from a formula into the raw data that we need. If we jump to the bottom, okay, we've got the 263,000, everything is there that we need. We can then delete column D and E. And then we have a file which has the full name in that column. We have city, state and country. So this file should now be accepted by the radio. So let's go ahead and save this user file, and then we'll attempt to import that into the radio. So now we're back in the radio under ham contacts, and we can simply make sure 128 is ticked, and then we can say import, and then we need to select that user file. Say open. That's now loaded the information in, and we can see the full name is now there in the name column, city, state and country. And we would then have to simply write this to the radio. So the radio needs to be on. Just turning my radio on. And then we can attempt to write this. Now this may take a considerable amount of time. Now I don't know why it says out of 16,490, but we will write this to the radio and then check back when it's finished and see if we have all the contacts in there. Well, that was a success. The file has written to the radio. It did take forever. It took over an hour, and I've checked the radio and it tells me there are 263,834 contacts. and you can see on the screen that there's 263,833, but when I look in the radio there is one blank empty record in there. But I'm unable to delete that from the radio using the menus. Maybe there is a way, but that was a lengthy exercise getting those in, but it's done. So next up I'm going to have a look at programming in the PMR radio channels to the radio and seeing if we can get those in and see how easy that is. So I've used the CPS software to create a zone, PMR 446, and I've added the first 5 of the PMR channels into it, and it was alright. It's not the best piece of software, I must admit. There is no window that appears if you double click on a row to edit all of the settings laid out in a nice friendly way. It is just a lot of scrolling from side to side and setting relevant fields. In comparison, if you look at the UVII Plus software that comes with it, if you double click on any row you get this nice friendly window, and it's an awful lot easier to work your way through these and to make your adjustments than it is scrolling in a table. But it's okay, it works, it does the job. Now there are other software packages out there which will enable you to edit the code plug in this radio. I'm not testing those, I'm simply looking at this radio and what comes with it. So I am aware of at least 2 which are very highly rated, and they would be worth looking into if you buy this radio. So let's have a quick look at the menu system. So pushing menu brings up the menu, and it's a bit of an odd one really. I mean, I can see why they've done it, but you know, the Anytone is a vertical menu system, and the up and down buttons will take you through. Let's just show you. So on the radio here, you push menu and everything is laid out in a list, which is fine. If you want to go to scan, you then have to push select, and you go to your relevant option, select, and you move around, and that all makes sense. You can switch in a vertical layout. The up and down button works as you would expect, and that's pretty straightforward. Now on the Radioddity GD88, it's horizontal and vertical, but then you only have an up and down, which is a bit peculiar, but it does work. If I push up, then it's moving me to the right, and then it goes down here, and then it carries on moving across, and I can move back. And you just have to remember that you're navigating horizontally with a vertical up down, which is a bit weird, but you get used to it quite quickly, so that's okay. So if I want to go and have a look at the device information, I can just go backwards and I end up down here, and then back again to get, and then I push select, similar to how the Anytone works. And then when you get to these menus, you're using a vertical again, and everything is displayed vertically effectively, and then your back button, and then back again. So it works and it's fine, but it's not the best. It would be better if the icons were all laid out in a vertical manner rather than having this sort of weird horizontal bit going on. And it wouldn't be so bad if these up and down arrows had a left and a right as well, so you could go right if you wanted to go right. But there's a fair amount of stuff in here. You've also got options within these menus for conventional FM radio, which is quite nice. I don't see any support for airband in here, but a bit more playing with the radio, we may be able to see if it's able to support those frequencies, but I don't think it is. So we're going to leave it there with this particular radio. A first look of the GD88 and how to sort of get it basically set up. There's an awful lot in here. It can do an awful lot. The software is a little bit buggy. I did get a few error messages here and there and a couple of incorrect CRCs and stuff, but it didn't seem to have any bad effect on the operation of the radio. So I think if you were to set this radio up, use the software to get it configured exactly how you wanted it to be configured, it is a nice feeling radio. It's certainly solid. The battery has lasted really well throughout all of the testing that I've done today, and all of the writing of the contacts for an hour of flashing this thing, and the firmware upgrades, etc. The battery is still showing as absolutely full. as it was when it came out of the box, and I haven't had to charge it at all. So that looks very promising. It looks like it could be a good contender along with the Anytone. But if I had to choose which one of the two radios to go out and buy, I've got to say it would be the Anytone. It's just a bit more polished. The software is an awful lot better. But that's not to say that if Radioddity with the GD88 put a bit of extra time and effort into sorting the software out and making the software more reliable and easier to use, you know, this is a nice little radio, and it does work well. So okay, that's the quick look around the menus. We may do some more videos later on some of the digital functionality of the radio, but I think that's too much now. The video's getting a bit long, so it will be a bit outside of the scope of this video. And one last thing, this is a bit weird, but if you turn the radio off and you hold the green and red button and turn the radio on and wait, then you get the screen backwards for some reason, which is really bizarre. And then if I turn it back on, we'll still get the screen backwards, so in reverse. If we then do it again, you'll hear the noise, and then you just get no screen whatsoever. It's just completely black screen. And then if we do it again, we get the small screen but the right way round, and it's fully operable. I mean, it absolutely works as you would expect. It will change channels and do all the stuff, and then if we do it again, then we're back to normal. So really strange. It seems to be some sort of screen testing mode by holding these two buttons when the radio is turned on. Go figure. I hope you found the information in this video helpful, and if you did, then please help the channel out by giving it a thumbs up and subscribing. This really does help to ensure that I can continue to provide content. Please feel free to buy me a coffee, details are in the description below, and if you have any questions or comments, then you know what to do in the comments section. All I ask is that you keep it respectful. Trolls and nasty know-it-alls need not apply. Until next time, stay safe, stay happy, and catch you in the next one.